And this unit is about marking and grading techniques. It basically focuses on marking and grading techniques, the types of grading symbols, and the functions of marks and grades. Lastly, it also looks at effective marking practices, and effective recording practices. So an outline of Unit 6. Right. Unit 6.1, we look at the different types of grading symbols and functions of marks and grades. So grading rationales, we have sorting, motivation, and feedback. Sorting is to label learners on the basis of their performance. So as the term says, we are sorting the learners. Motivation is to motivate the learners to do harder work. In other words, you make them positive about learning and excited to work harder. Feedback is simply to provide feedback to learners to see where they can improve on their work. There are 4 approaches to grading. Number 1 is norm referenced, 2, criteria referenced, 3 is mastery learning, 4 is pass-fail grading. Okay. Various aspects, that's number 6.2, relating to marking and the use of different assessment tools. We first have to look at what exactly a marking scheme is. That's a set of criteria used in assessing learners' learning. So this has been set up before the time, the criteria for assessing, which forms the marking scheme. The assessment activity usually guides the designing and use of particular marking schemes. An essay is an assessment question that requires an answer in a sentence, paragraph, or short composition. There are 3 kinds of essays. You get role-play essay, structured essays, and interpretation of data essays. Okay. Again, have a look at the advantages and disadvantages of these 4 approaches. Right. 6.3 will be focusing, it's a very important, we'll be focusing on effective marking practices. And although this document is not in your study guide, you are urged to go and download it from the website here on the screen. It is also in your study guide, this document about assessment for action, marking and feedback, manageable and effective ways of marking and providing feedback to pupils. It's a very interesting article. I will just shortly discuss the most important points that you should be aware of in this document. So the first one is section 1, which is about the purposes of marking and feedback. So first question, what is marking and feedback? A distinction can be made between marking and feedback, but quality is the most important factor. So marking, we can say, is the tool that teachers use daily to find out what children have done and where they need to go next in terms of what they are learning. Okay. Look at feedback. What is feedback? Feedback may consist of a dialogue between teacher and child, a group or a class, and will provide pupils with information about how they performed in relation to the learning intention or objectives, and the next steps necessary to improve the work. Marking and feedback are an essential part of the teaching and learning process. Used effectively, marking and feedback can help children become better learners by giving a clear picture of what they have done and what they need to develop. They give recognition and praise for achievement and provide suggestions for the next learning task. So this is a very important process to have in your classes if you want your learners to learn well and to study well. Section 3 in this document, we look at the benefits of assessment for learning. Assessment for learning will raise attainment in schools as children become better learners. provide an ongoing record-keeping system measured against learning intentions, and motivate and encourage all children by helping them to identify strengths and successes. So all over you see learner-centered teaching taking place. They are actively involved in all of these processes. Section 4 is about what makes effective marking. Marking will be effective in the classroom when it is manageable. It relates to learning intentions which are shared with the child and criteria for success and are understood. Teachers focus on certain aspects of the work, not attempting to assess everything, and provide constructive criticism. All right, 6.4, we're just going to continue with effective recording practices of upper primary assessment results. Okay. So schools, and that means every school, should have a systematic approach to recording a learner's progress and attainments to be reported to the parents at regular intervals. Purposes of the records, assessment for learning and assessment of learning will involve the recording of assessment information. The nature of recording and language in which it is recorded will be different for each. You can see that how important this is for your learners and for yourself to keep things up to date, to help you to make progress with a learner. Okay, so assessment of learning. If we look at that, we see it constitutes a record of learners' progress and attainment, whether at class or at school level at the end of any given period of learning, as at the end of a unit of work, of a term, or end of a year. It may involve reviewing a learner's written work for a term, group-administered standardized tests of reading, reviewing a learner's portfolio of a work for the year. Okay. Assessment for learning is where the teacher focuses on using the assessment information gathered to provide ongoing feedback to the learner and to plan learning experiences which meet his or her learning needs. Much of this assessment will involve a series of related judgments and responses on the teacher's part that will impact directly on the teaching and learning process. So one really has to stay objective during these processes in order to make a fair assessment for learning. All right. Still continue with 6.4, recording results of assessments. Here is some activities that should be involved when doing assessment. Is recording significant observations of learners in a day-to-day learning activity, taking into account both the processes and the products of learning. Recording significant details of learners' performance in tasks and tests, and keeping significant and useful records of learners' performance in learning. Okay, so here significant is the word that we see, and observation, details, and usefulness of these recording practices. And that is the end of this Unit 6. The next session we will have will be about the last 3 units. I hope you enjoyed, and make sure that you study your study guide very well. Thank you.